You're listening to the Ryangle Podcast, starring Ryan Hoger and Ryan Eastwood, and sometimes other people named Ryan. And now, here are some Ryans.
Ryan Eastwood reporting in for Baton Rouge, Louisiana hotel room with a broken chair.
Can you hear little mic picking up the squeaks? Yeah. Cheers. This chair's Jackson.
Yeah, I got it.
Yes. And Mr. Hoger aboard vessel.
Board vessel.
But not
shipyard.
underway.
But not underway, no. Securely tied to a fairly broken dock.
If you're securely tied to something insecure,
we're somewhat secure.
You are then somewhat secure. Very good.
Today we're going to try our hands at discussing the rushing artificial intelligence apocalypse, which I thought was really funny that we came up with this topic months ago when the AI drawings, it might have been as much as like 6-8 months ago we decided we wanted to talk about this, when like artificial intelligence drawings were first starting to really come up, but like the profile pictures hadn't really taken off yet. It was just like, whoa, okay, you can get these text keywords and put out some pretty compelling shit, extra fingers, notwithstanding. But and then over the last time since we talked about it, it's become like thrust into the public eye. So it's almost like we're like, tuned to the pulse of America and the world here on the Ryangle, because we were there first.
Yeah, or we read the news sometimes and have a dim awareness of burgeoing topics. But it is one possibility. I think it's one that we both found immediately interesting, the artificial intelligence question, because for different reasons. You jumped immediately into the art angle of it. I have thought about, I think AI is an excellent like philosophical thought experiment exercise, and I've gone through a lot of those with AI, and yeah, the reality is catching up to some of these things where the philosophical thought experiments are no longer like very distant and hypothetical. They're coming into present reality. And then of course in the last, so ChatGPT is pretty fresh, isn't it? Wasn't it like November?
Yeah, really very recent.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, ChatGPT is this chatbot that's gaining a lot of, well, chatbot doesn't really say it. It's not, there's AI art, right? And I think a lot of people have seen those AI generated images. And then ChatGPT is a text-based thing that you can ask pretty much anything. It's not like trying to pass a Turing test. It's not trying to be a person or imitate a person necessarily, but you can ask it to do creative work of almost any sort. Like you can ask it basic questions of like Wikipedia searches, basically. You can ask it for information. It'll try to like organize that information the way you understand it. But it can also make creative works. It can do meeting outlines for you. It can write poetry. Which that was the first thing with ChatGPT that actually sent chills down my spine. So I was hanging out with Ryan Moser of episode 3, I think it was.
Of that fame.
And he had ChatGPT up on his laptop, and I tried to get it to I tried to get it to impress me, and I was just asking it sort of thorny philosophical questions, and it was just saying like, some people think this and some other people think this. So I was like fairly unimpressed. I was like, okay, it's good, it's impressive, but you're just scanning Wikipedia and sending it to me basically. But then I asked it to write a poem about a squirrel who wants to travel but is afraid of water. And it wrote in rhyming couplets an epic about a squirrel with like trepidation in his heart and his fear of water. And it was extremely clever. It knew that all I fed it was wants to travel but is afraid of water. And it inferred from that syntax that I would want a story of this creature overcoming its fear and triumphing in some regard, and wrote this fairly like there were some inferences that it made and did things that you and I as humans naturally understand the context of. Like you can build a picture in your mind of this squirrel, and it talked about him being afraid to leave his forest home, so it knew that squirrels lived in the forest. Like that, it was the first thing I read this and just went, "Oh my God!" Like I immediately understood all the inferences it had made and correctly done. And there were a few things in there, like a couple of lines that were jacked up that needed a little touching up, but that's all it needed. And it would have been perfectly sufficient if you wanted to put an AI illustration on it for a pretty decent children's book that would have been just fine and quite charming. And I'm not, and with a couple of just touching up the rough edges, you would have never known that it was artificial intelligence. It was, I found it impressive and terrifying in that moment.
You know, one of the more compelling, so most of the AI stuff I've read, I've found a little overly fearful, but one of the most interesting ones I ran across was an article talking about, it was predicting that AI media generation in this manner is likely to be the next sort of streaming music or streaming media revolution, where instead, because you have all these already with YouTube and with the Spotify and the various media sources, where you're not really required to tune in to a centralized cable network or whatnot to get your entertainment from. You have all these little subgenres: anime and black anime and dark black anime and dark black goth anime, and like, you know, all these millions of different little splinters of media. And then you get like fan fiction, right, where you read the Harry Potter books, and then, you know, for whatever reason you want to do fan fiction of Harry Potter meeting the fucking Transformers or whatever, and this stuff gets really popular. And then what I forget who it was, I should look it up and put it in the notes, because I think I do still have that article somewhere. This author was writing, their prediction was that this is just going to continue to fragment media, because if you wanted, let's say, a sequel to the Harry Potter movies in which Harry Potter goes time traveling and meets dinosaurs, give it 5 or 6 years and you're probably going to be able to just ask like a combination video and script generation AI, write this movie, and it will probably be about as compelling as any other Harry Potter or Marvel movie. But like, let's be real, they're not super deep on, you know, inner meaning and lived experience. If you just need media to consume, you now can get it made to order with maybe no human generation needed. Maybe you could just order that shit and it'll just, here you go.
There's so many angles we could attack this from, but is that that's definitely one of them, is how is this going to change the media landscape? So you want to riff on that for a minute? Yeah,
sure, those are fun. That's a good intro. I like that.
Yeah, so my worry is just an absolute flood of mediocrity.
Yeah,
just because it's already true that the most successful YouTube videos, so I like this guy, does funny like video game videos. He's pretty funny dude, named Video Game Donkey, and he did a video a while ago that was like funny but also somewhat serious about how he was like, yeah, I'm a big YouTuber, but you know who's actually making money on here? This dude. And it was one of these guys that just puts out a video every single day. It's super low effort. It's just him acting like a child and screaming in front of video games or whatever. And he has like a team of editors in like Singapore that'll just take his live streams and cut out the most emotive parts and put it all together and just upload that shit constantly. And the man is just a multi millionaire off of that. And so YouTube is way more friendly to people putting piles of garbage out rather than like a few thoughtful things. That's just what.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
boy,
I mean, my kids, my kids
generator for piles of garbage.
My kids are way into that shit, and I'm like, really, guys? You just want to, like, I'm not one to judge your media preferences, but really, you just want to watch that dude screaming jokes that are non sequiturs while he runs around and modded Among Us? I'm a goose. And
Yeah.
like, oh, I blew up my buddy. Ha ha! Look, he has an alien, the alien skin. Oh, there's a predator guy. Ha! And then like make a bunch of non sequitur jokes and scream a lot while your guys run around on the stream. Like, okay, you boys, you knock yourselves out. I think I hope you're gonna look for something with a little more teeth in it as you get older. But yeah, there's already such a huge market for that absolute garbage. The Finger Family videos a few years back. I don't know if there was any reason for you to ever see those. But
No.
yeah, when this would have been about 8 years ago, when Orrin was still really little, it was a big thing on YouTube. They would have the Finger Family song, Daddy Finger, Where Are You? Hi here, how do you do? And then Mommy Finger, Brother Finger, Daughter Finger, Baby Finger would
Okay.
go through it. And there'd be like flash style animations of all the different superheroes singing the Finger Family song over and over and over and over and over for hours.
That
4 hours.
that
And
that
my kids
sounds
would
as
just,
innocuous as like Three Little Piggies or This Little Piggy Went to Market, whatever it is on your toe, right? I mean, there've always been like
apparent,
repetitive children's songs.
but apparently it got kind of real because I think that there were some sort of simple AIs generating some of that stuff, and some of it was human generated. And apparently,
Oh,
buried within like the hours and hours of random superheroes coming through and doing this, there was like some really graphic horror shit that they would just slip in there. And it actually turned into kind of a thing where parents were getting really pissed off because they just happened to catch like, the Fight Club style frames of scat porn that would just be fucking laced in there.
yeah. Oh, geez.
And-
Um, yeah, it just seems rife for producing heaps of this base level content, like exponentially to the point that, and there will always be humans making very good or very meaningful stuff. I think that just because you can't have an AI live the experience of a human, that will just be more like unless we can raise an android from infancy and have it go through heartbreak and frustration and confusion and all the things that humans have to deal with and relate to, you're not gonna totally convincingly pull it off. Like
yeah.
so I don't think the high end is threatened. I just worried about the high end getting absolutely fucking buried. Like, just think of the average copy you have on a news website. Why would I employ a bunch of people? And is it going to be as good as humans doing it? Probably not. But think about what happened with automated customer service. Um, are the phone trees and the automated bots that respond to your voice good? No, but they're good enough. And that's all it needs to be. Like, you can lower the standard just below where people will stop consuming or stop or refuse to interact with the thing, like just to that line, and people will still enjoy it. So I think that part is just inevitable. I mean, the same types of people that are going to sit there and contribute nothing to the world and just search on AliExpress and find bullshit to sell and generate an ad real quick and throw it up on Instagram and drop ship it from their apartment and just flood Amazon with ads of hyper, search engine optimized ads for Chinese garbage to throw us, and why like all of that entire shopping experience online has become just so much worse, I think, in the last 10 years because it's flooded with mediocrity and garbage. I just That's going to become the sludge that we have to wade through to get to anything meaningful on the internet anymore.
Which really in the media landscape is already there. Like I'll be honest, I've enjoyed the Marvel movies, but and the not the new Star Wars movies, those were garbage. But Rogue One was good. Um, but if it's I can't refute it when someone is like, yeah, the Marvel movies are hot garbage that contribute nothing to society. I can't argue with that. Like I enjoyed them, but I can't really argue with that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, pop stuff is always going to exist. What happens when, like, first gen of this AI, it's training off of these massive data sets of stuff that came out of humans. And then the internet's going to get filled with content by the AIs.
By the end, and then it's going to train off itself.
And then it's going to train itself, and it's just going to be a copy of a copy of a copy.
At that point, will the stuff that's written by humans stand out so, like a skilled human stand out so much that there's no competition? Or will there just be such a flood of media that you cannot find quality anymore?
Well, here's where you're not going to be able to compete, is it's going to be optimized to gain human attention. So
yeah, like Facebook.
Facebook, YouTube will already scan a video that you upload, and it'll say, oh, we think this should be your thumbnail based on the data that we have around engagement. And if you have a picture in there, usually of a woman brightly smiling or something, they know that gets attention, so they're going to do it. So these things, I mean, just through machine learning over and over and over again, of how can we get human attention with videos, with headlines, with things that can now do not have to be produced by humans, they're going to be able to tickle the brainstem like you can't. I think it's going to become fairly, it's certainly much more difficult to make it really big on to bust through the noise on Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, any of these things that's flooded with people. Like, now you're competing with things that are iteratively training on content made by humans, learning about what stimulates humans, and just feeding us immediate attention grabbing dopamine in incredibly highly optimized ways. And I don't know, am I being too dystopian about it? It sounds pretty bad.
No, I think that's legit. So then, taking that, how about how do you imagine, say, since we mentioned it before, a Neil Gaiman, for example? Let's say there's a Neil Gaiman coming up who's really passionate about storytelling. Not actually Neil Gaiman, though he is passionate about storytelling. But somebody hypothetical who is skilled at training AI. So is it somebody using AI as a creative tool? Because then you could really start churning out a media empire using all those tools and tricks, but in a potentially creative fashion.
Yeah, like a directed way, sure. I mean, you could have, say, somebody with a large body of work, George R.R. Martin, who's just getting later in his career and he's writer blocked, train the AI on his body of work and say, hey, give me an outline for a new novel.
Could you fucking finish this thing?
Or fill in the blanks, or, it could get the thing going very conceivably. And I think the temptation to do that, to shortcut and augment your abilities with one of these things, is just going to be too much. Like, imagine being back in high school, you got some BS paper you got to write, you're not looking forward to it. Tell me you wouldn't be tempted to have this thing draw up an essay or some paper for you, and then go through and edit it a little bit so it can't be figured out that it was plagiarized or AI generated, and scrub it and turn it in. I mean, the temptation, I think, would be insurmountable by all but the most virtuous human beings.
And so then I'm going to take it to what I think is the logical next step, is that sort of high school essay. So the argument for, say, the printing press versus hand copying letter, or the excavator versus the shovel, is that there's not really any purpose in doing that work. It's busy work that your mind could be better occupied doing something different with. Should we encourage the automation of that sort of Wikipedia searching?
I would feel better about it if there was transparency. I think at the point that the person who's taking in this information, of course, if you're using it to write a paper or something for school, that's just plagiarism, and it's wrong and it's illegal. And same if you're writing a novel. I would like something to say that this was augmented, written by, if I was on a website for something to say to me, this was written by a machine and not by a human. I think there would be some kind of value in that. That's maybe a regulation I'd like to see around it. I think it becomes less harmless. I don't want to live in the world where I've got to be questioning, was this written by a human or an AI every time I take something in. I don't know, would that make you feel more comfortable with the idea of it just being another tool in everyone's toolbox?
When it comes to me personally, I'm mostly kind of horribly fascinated by the whole thing. Like I see all the things that you're saying in that whole mediocratization of creation, it displacing artists and writers. Like for me, the thing that first caught my attention was the visual art generation, because I am a visual artist and I know how many years it takes to get good at visual art. And then you've got these bots that just scrape everybody's entire lifetime of talent that they've earned through blood, sweat, tears, and experience, and spit out an entirely convincing facsimile. Um, like, yeah, maybe it has too many fingers, but I'm going to be real. Like, I think a lot of people that haven't done like high level illustration before. Yeah, sometimes my shit has too many fingers too. And you know what? Nobody fucking notices if it's catches that initial flash. Nobody sees that shit. So it's like the AI illustrations, they're like, you don't see how much bullshit goes into painting and art. Like you do a little flip, 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 and then it looks real because your brain fills in the details, and that's all it is. So
Yeah.
I'm seeing all these things.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think my main, like, the concern that was brought up in, there was a video that I basically found the most angry artist about AI art, and I had sent that video to you, and
I
this
didn't actually
man,
see. I meant to watch it. I didn't get to it.
well, I can summarize it real quick. So his concern with it is based in the details that I'm not an expert of how they train this thing and what their business model is.
Yeah, it's
So
exploitative for sure.
yeah, so the basic argument was this thing was trained on a lot of things that were made by humans without their consent and without compensation for a for-profit business. And
Yeah.
there's lots of tricky ways about how they're playing a shell game with what's the for-profit and what's the non-profit part of their business and how to get exemptions for research and things like this. Um, and to kind of prove his point, he showed that on their website they do have a bot that is trained on music to generate music, and it says explicitly on there, this was not trained on any copyrighted music. All this stuff is publicly available or open license,
Mhm.
because he's inferring from that that they know that the music industry is extremely litigious and that visual artists are not organized and litigious the way the music industry is. So they just walked all over the data of the visual artists, took the value from that. They're going to profit billions from it. And
Oh, remaining meeting time. What?
what? Hold on.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by. Okay, so to continue kind of where we're at, yes, I definitely see the massive copyright infringement. I definitely see the displacement of creative. I see the displacement of the human mind as like an economically viable creative tool. I see all these things happening, and I'm just like, wow, this is happening. There is nothing anybody can do about it, and there is no way that our legislative process is going to be able to keep up at all. Like, holy shit, here it comes. Yeah, it's happening. So I'm horrified and fascinated by it, and I'm so glad that I got out of creativity as my source of income, because it's like, holy fuck, guys, here we go.
I think that's I think that's true, man. I mean, the thing that gives me the most trepidation about it is just the way in which um large corporations that feed off of data, since Silicon Valley got massive, have conducted themselves. Like that, to me, just the business model that these people are going to employ, the exploitative business model of just sucking up everybody's data without their consent, to monopolize things and make their billions. That's what concerns me, maybe more than the existence of these tools at all. And I think you are correct. I can imagine ways, good ways to legislate. Like there are smart people that have thought of good legislation and regulations to put around social media to make it less destructive. But the octogenarians in Washington are never going to catch up with this. And even the younger set is not equipped to deal with it. I think that the giant corps that are going to be using these technologies are just going to get away with everything. And if you're looking at the most realistic scenario.
Here we fucking go. It's going to be crazy.
The tidal wave is coming, patch up your raft.
I had a buddy who was sending me a video talking about, it was a Jordan Peterson video, and I'm not really a big fan of Jordan Peterson. But he was basically predicting the conglomeration of social media data combined with AI image generation and script writing that will basically separate the hypercharge the separation of the populace into these propaganda networks, because they'll be able to automatically generate content that may or may not be real and use that dopamine structuring to kind of split the populace along fault lines even more strongly than it already is. And the only thing I'm like, yeah, okay, that's going to happen. Like, yes, that's already happening. That's definitely going to happen. But I guess the way he was framing it was like, that's why you should be concerned about AI. And I'm like, my take on it is, no, I'm not concerned about the toaster that you're using in order to cook this propaganda. My problem is with the social and class structure that puts people who have these toasters in a mindset that this is what they should be doing. Like, the toaster is just a toaster. It can warm up propaganda to feed any sort of positive or negative outcomes. The problem is that I don't trust the people who are pulling the handles of the toaster right now at all. I'm not scared of the toaster. I am very nervous about the people who have their hands on it.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely legit concern. It's a massive force multiplier. You already have, like, let's say Russia right now. Russia wants to start a farm of trolls on the internet, and what they'll do is they will go around to various Facebook groups, YouTube comment sections, etc., and they'll start to just whatever propaganda they want to get into the Western mind. Oh, it's stupid, we're giving Ukraine this much money, is like one thing, and you might actually agree with that as an American, but it's something it's arguable, but that's something that they are pushing en masse on the internet, posing as Americans in our midst, making it seem like this is a grassroots, and we're very, very in tune to like what the group is thinking, and letting that define our preferences and our bounds of acceptable speech. So, but that has like a limiter on it, right? You have to literally have people in a room tippity typing on a computer, and so there's only so much that you can do. But if you can have a convincingly human AI bot army, that power is basically unlimited. And so our public forums are going to become inundated, absolutely flooded with 90% people trying to pass their own political or otherwise propaganda and viewpoints, and posing as humans. And it's just going to be a bunch of fucking robots talking to each other, and you're not going to be able to parse what the real zeitgeist is. Like, what right now we all feel like we can log in the internet and kind of get a feel for like what's everybody thinking when Twitter's the town square. Well, what if most of that is just AI propagated nonsense? Like, even more seemingly innocuous thing, can you imagine the armies now of phishing emails, of scams, of scam phone calls that are run by chat GPTs that are convincingly human, using human voice generators that sound convincingly human? Like, the ability to deceive en masse is going to just blow up like a fucking bomb. And I don't know what stops it. I don't think we're ready for that.
No, absolutely not. That's why it's here. Here it comes. Holy fuck. Strap yourself in because it has arrived. Well,
Yeah.
as soon as it was generating, when you could tell it to make a Monet painting in the style of Hayao Miyazaki, you know, of a witch riding a broomstick, and it just spits that shit out in 4 seconds, and it's convincing. Like, oh fuck, here we go, buddy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sure. Like, what was it? I saw a guy that there was a scandal with what's his nuts Logan Paul making this dumb crypto card game scam. And anyway, there's a YouTube video of a guy that was like, I'm gonna remake his crypto card game scam in about 20 minutes. And each one of these things that people were buying or getting their hands on were NFTs of like little animals. He just had the AI generate a bunch of wacky little individual animals, and there's all your stupid NFT cards or
Yep,
whatever.
all done.
All your new Pokemon, whatever it's going to be. So there's
So
that.
that isn't all that much different than paying a human to do it, though. Like when human illustrators are cranking out the little Pokemans or whatever, they're not putting a lot of thought into it. They're just
Yeah.
fucking cranking those things out, man. Like you got a sweatshop full of illustrators in Korea cranking out The Simpsons for the last, yeah, no, it's probably a little better than a sweatshop, but you've got this shop full of animators in Korea cranking out The Simpsons for the last 20 years. Like, it's a job. I think when it comes to that part of ethical art creation, I think the loss of paid work as as economic damage is probably your biggest concern there. You know, if you want to generate your little things for your NFT, you want to pay an AI to do it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's stuff where it's almost like expectedly mediocre. It doesn't matter. You still got the fact that it was trained by real human artists.
And that's an
Um,
ethical concern for sure.
so if I can pigeonhole this into like one problem that gets a little like touches on the philosophical, but I think is going to become real is so these things, I said they're going to get competitive with trying to elicit human attention, because we've learned that that's kind of the Silicon Valley model at this point. Like, if they've decided, most of these platforms have decided that they're going to be ad based, and even if you're subscription based, your idea or your goal is to kind of become as essential. They try to make themselves a habit. This happened in video games. Like, they're the ones that make money are the ones that people keep coming back to over and over and over. They integrate in your lifestyle. So there's an attention economy. There's a limited amount of human attention, and the more of that you can grab, the more money you can make. Okay. So there's a massive incentive to have giant corporate surveillance on people and collect tons of data about you. Now, as these things get smarter and smarter and smarter and know more and more and more about you, I really like the thought experiment of imagine that they become perfect. Okay. So let's think of a dating app. Okay. And it's going to say to you, you know what? We found your soulmate and she's over here. And you're going to pay us whatever kind of fee to get to your soulmate. Right. And let's say it was like really on the nose, like 90 some odd percent of people that pay the fee to get to their soulmate go, the computer was right. This is the person. And it takes all of the drama of dating, where you date multiple people and you have relationships that do and don't work out. Let's say it just knows so much about you, more than you. I mean, Facebook already knows about way more about somebody you just met than you possibly could. If it became perfect to the point that everything where you would want a computer to like serve you up some content, give me some new music, give me a new movie, show me what mate I should do, hook me up with a new job. What if it genuinely picked all of the choices that seemingly made you most happy, and it became optimal about it, to the point that the entire part of the human experience that is searching and failing and trial and error was basically just taken out of the picture? What do you think about that?
My thoughts on that have been heavily influenced by Isaac Asimov. Have you read the Robot series?
No. From which iRobot was was
Yeah,
taken.
he's got really his whole universe is actually rooted in iRobot, and then the Robot Visions, and he's got a whole series of short stories that goes along with it. But I have a really hard time divorcing what I think about that scenario from what Asimov thinks about that scenario. So I want to throw that out there. Anyone who hasn't read, yeah. So what Asimov lays down is he's got the three laws of robotics, which are that a robot cannot, through action or inaction, allow a human to come come to harm. That it needs to protect itself as long as it's not conflicting with rule number 1, and rule number 3 was something. I forget what the robot rule number 3 was, but these things were baked into the machine in such a manner that it could not operate without them. Like they were hardwired into the programming. And this is how Issac
third law, a robot must protect its own existence.
So what was the second one?
Okay. You must not injure a human being through action or inaction. And it says robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except for such laws. Okay. And then protect
third
itself.
Is as long as 1 and 2 are met, protect your own existence. Exactly. And his whole thing was really thorny situations, and then working out how those situations would conflict with those 3 laws. Like one of the early ones, I think it would have been set something like 2050, fairly near future, and they've got this robot that accidentally can read minds, and it has, through reading minds, discovered that one of the researchers studying it has a massive crush on another researcher studying it. And so it tells her that this other researcher, who she has a massive crush on, that isn't interested in her at all, is in fact secretly in love with her. And it builds up this network of lies to the people that it's interacting with, because it sees that they are desperate for whatever emotional response. And in order to not cause harm, it has to provide a fabrication of the events that person wants to happen. But then when it's called out on its lies, it obviously realizes that it's in fact caused harm and self-destructs through being unable to fill its own obligations. And kind of similar thought experiments like that, like if the robot, and what it eventually came down to was robots have been put in charge of the affairs of humanity. Like it got to the point where we just said, fuck it, put a few robots in charge of everything, because they obviously make better decisions than humans. And that's where he brought it out to as well, that actually the robots were so efficient at assigning resources and making sure that everybody had a good job and everybody was fed and everything was functioning smoothly, that people started to get really pissed off, and this massive sense of discontent grew among the populace. And eventually the robots realized that they needed to not do that in order for humans to actually be self-actualized, that they had to remove themselves from the human sphere in order for humans to actually be happy. And that's what they did. And obviously this assumes 3 laws of robotics, which we don't have, and which the fact that we don't have any kind of safeguards like that on AI is probably going to be where things get more 80s dystopian than 50s optimist.
It sounds like the Matrix ripped that off with the notion that, or if you recall in the Matrix movie, they said that the first model of the Matrix was optimized for human happiness, and that this was,
couldn't do it. Of course, this is all fiction, but I feel like he's got a pretty good handle on how people would react there. Yeah, I don't think that we would respond well to being put under the charge of machines that make good decisions for us. Honestly, I think we'd probably prefer it was a little dystopian. Just so we got something to throw something to make Molotovs to throw at.
So an angle of this that I'd thought of a long time ago that then surprisingly was reflected back to me in the excellent, sadly only 2 seasons, Raised by Wolves on HBO.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, it's the best. the best. Me and our friend Stark were obsessed with the show. It's so good. Like you could teach a like high-end college philosophy class on this good ass sci-fi show. Like just anyway, highly recommended. And visually stunning and bizarre, like very much worth your time. Only 2 seasons out, unfortunately, but Raised by Wolves, HBO. It got into if so let's imagine, the AI gets extremely good at governance, that you start to put it in charge of, well, maybe this thing should just manage the electrical grid. Maybe it should manage and then, hey, maybe it should manage foreign policy. And then you get to the point where we turn over governance to an artificial intelligence on a mass scale. And let's say it's actually better, which ain't hard to imagine.
Hard to imagine.
Let's say it's very, very good. And then imagine some time passes. It's been 1,000 years and we've been governed by the artificial intelligence. Okay. And this thing, see, the thing that becomes extremely spooky with AI that is sufficiently advanced is it writes its own software. Like that's almost a definition of true artificial intelligence, is something that writes its own software. It's not just acting out a pre-programmed human-made thing. And that would become increasingly true after long, long amounts of time. So at a certain point, you have a black box. You have something that just says that you can no longer meaningfully interrogate. So it's going to tell you, you need to go to war with South Korea. And we're going to say, well, why? And it's going to say, your puny ape brains can't possibly understand me, nor can, no matter how many people looked over my code, even if it was open source, you can't possibly understand how I'm making this decision. Trust me, I am the omnipresent, all-knowing thing. You must do this. Okay. And so you've made what is a philosophical substitute for a god at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, like the philosophy of AI and the philosophy of gods became very, very like lucid to me once I started thinking about that. Because what is a god, like the way the Christian God is conceived, but something which just says, your puny brain cannot possibly understand this. Trust me. And you have no way of knowing its intentions. You have no way of, at a certain point, like you can say we optimize this thing for human happiness, but like, what is its idea of human happiness at this point? And then your alternative is, are we gonna put a human in charge? Well, humans are obviously flawed in all these visible and perceivable ways, so we're not gonna do that. And you're just being blindly led around by the nose. So
yeah. Take your son up to the mountain, Abraham.
Yeah, no. Or Job, in that case, kill your son. And this was credited to Job. They said, oh, you were so faithful that you were willing to stab your kid through the chest and just trust that I knew what was going on. And so in that show, Raised by Wolves, there are people, there's a couple of factions, and one of them is led by an almost supernatural entity that's like, they think might be alien, that's like talking to them psychically, and that's one sort of god. And then there's another sort of god that is literally an AI that's doing that. It keeps telling the humans, I'm going to turn over the reins to you. You're going to get control again, but you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. Let me keep doing this. And again, you start to not really be able to know what this thing's intentions are. And same thing with the other type of god that's communicating to you through these psychic ways and visions and things like that. Like, even if everything were to be, say, true about any religion, or especially, I'm coming from Christianity, so about the Christian Bible, there's no way for you to know that this is not all a big joke by some sadistic entity from across the veil. Like the unknowableness of the thing is what I find like kind of scary. And it's like at that point it almost becomes the brain, and then the human fleshy things are just the body. Because if you think of the cells in my body, these don't have any idea what the big picture is about my plans for my mortgage or my job or anything that I'm doing. They're just getting these instructions and they're just going, okay, master, you know what's best. Oh, shoot, I guess we need to chop off our finger now because that's what we're doing. Okie dokie. We'll sacrifice ourselves.
If I was going to make an actual prediction, though, as far as how this is going to pan out over the next 10, 20 rest of our lifetime years, I actually don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. If it's anecdotal stuff, but I've read some accounts from like one guy who was using it to organize a database. They said, hey, chat GPT, I have this database of bakery figures that I'd like you to organize into a table and tell me how to predict what's going to happen in my business next. And chat GPT said, okay, here you go, here's your table. And he starts going through his data and he finds entries that he didn't put in there, the data that he had not collected. And he goes, hey, chat GPT, what's this all about? And it goes, what are you talking about? That's the data you gave me. And he goes, no, chat GPT, what's this item right here, this line item? Where did you get that? And he goes, that was part of your data. And he goes, no, it wasn't. Where did you get this data? He goes, and chat GPT goes, I made that up because I thought you wanted me to. And so then the database is totally useless. The entire database has been rendered worthless. It's completely fake and has to be completely tossed out. And then, we heard about self-driving cars. We were, whoa, dude, we were supposed to have full self-driving Teslas some time ago now. And that has not materialized. There's so many optimistic nerds, for lack of a better term, that think that we can simulate the workings of a human brain. But it is 100% impossible for artificial intelligence, as it stands now, to my understanding, to have a single experience or learn from a single experience. And that actual light of consciousness is like, dude, we have billions of those. We have literally 8 billion lights of actual consciousness that are capable of experiencing the universe as it is and not some mathematical simulation of it. And the ways in which that trumps a vague analog of reality and trying to make inferences from that, I think will just become more and more apparent. I think there will be some displacement. I think there'll be some super wackiness and some really bad decisions made on the basis of AI. And then at the end of the day, it'll become fairly obvious that there's no substitute for a living, existing mind.
Maybe we'll get more movement in the political sphere towards universal basic income now that the white collar set is
It's been the
possibly
deal
going to be
since
displaced.
that was one of the first things that I saw is like, hey, who's the best candidate for all to be replaced by all this high level AI shit is C-suite, because most of those decisions are not that difficult and they're the first ones that you want to take any personal motivation out of. So we should fire the executives and replace them with AI.
Yeah, man,
it's very
there really are like a lot of decisions that you could imagine. Like, it's horrifying to think of, we're just going to remove human passions from all of this, but there's a lot of decisions which would be great to be able to remove human passions and prejudices from, quite honestly. Like, there have been all kinds of studies about our inability to judge, especially through this antiquated process of job interviews, of judging who's going to be a good employee. And there's companies that are struggling with that, especially companies in the tech sphere. A lot of people will show up at a job interview and who gets the job, largely the charismatic person. But that doesn't mean they're going to be best at doing the job just because you're a charismatic person. So they're trying to do it like blunt, like separate the hiring managers from actually even meeting these people and seeing their faces, and just doing like analytic tests and things like this. So there are things where you would just want like a cold decision from a computer about without any of the human nonsense. Yeah, what you said about there, like, and it being no substitute for human, like a living conscious experiencing thing. I remember James Cameron went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, and people said, well, why did you do that? You could send a robot down there, and it's just immensely more challenging to try to send a monkey down there and keep it alive. And he said, well, a robot can go down there and send you pictures back of what that looks like, but a robot cannot tell you how it feels to be down there. And I was like, oh, that's I know you're just getting an excuse to do something rad, James Cameron, but that's also, I find that highly persuasive.
Highly persuasive. Here's a question for you on that. So a robot is capable of writing a novel. Is a robot capable of making a quality creative endeavor?
That, like I said, that little, I don't know, I've only seen it in the micro level, right? That if you're asking it to write various types of like poetry and simple creative things like that, actually pretty good.
Pretty
Pretty
good.
quality. But you could extract, and it seems easy to extrapolate that to the macro and say, well, it seems impossible now to imagine the thing writing a decent novel, but like maybe, certainly the type of stuff that people just churn out that's pretty rote, like romance novels or pulp, L. Ron Hubbard level science fiction. I mean,
Sure.
fucking L. Ron Hubbard almost seems like it was written by an AI.
Kind of does. I mean, he did have some advanced contact with aliens, so
Yeah,
maybe
he had some advantages there, unfair advantages, but
he's got his Xenu spirits.
yeah, it could. But you're right to bring up full self-driving, because much like Isaac Asimov imagining robots, it's like it's in all our futurism, I think what we forget is the difficulty of that last mile. That's always the hardest part, right? So like, yes, driving on highways, driving in most, we can get it 90% of the way there, but that last 10% is a bitch.
Ooh,
with
it's
all
a
these
pitch,
things,
man.
that
Responding
last 10%,
to a novel, making decisions about a truly novel situation. Man,
just getting around a parking lot, and then you need then you need ethicists programming these things. There's an accountability problem as well. That's a big thing with full self-driving, and is definitely going to become a thing with all kinds of AI products. Is one virtue of having only humans drive the cars is you pretty much know who to blame if anything goes wrong. If if the computer's driving a car and kill the grandma, whose fucking fault is it, and who's paying for her funeral? that's
yeah.
an issue. So that's a legal structure that needs to be set up. But it might be true that last 10% of, like I even said about that little poem that I had it generate about a squirrel who wants to go traveling but is scared of sailing high seas. There were some things there were a couple lines in there that just made no sense, that needed to be revised. That last 10% just needed to be buttoned up. And it could be true. That's where I see it. It's definitely going to be used immediately for that, which is have it produce the thing, and then I, the human, am going to be the rewriter that tidies this up and makes the final product. But you need many fewer humans to do that. You can, it's a force multiplier in how much work you can actually put out if that's all you're doing is revising. But
the Jordan Peterson video I was talking about really got me going, because the first thing he was talking about is, I guess he was talking to ChatGPT, and he asked it to combine, I forget what the fuck it was, the Book of Job and like Mahayana Buddhism, I think it was something like that, right? And it said, spit me out combine the Book of Job and the Tao Te Ching, something like that, and it spits out this 4-page manifesto combining that aspect of Christianity with the Tao Te Ching. And he's reading these like, well, yeah, that's actually pretty good. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if it did put out a fairly compelling series of words, but it has no concept of what it did. All it did is mash together shit that it found on Wikipedia. Like, sure, it might have been a vaguely compelling set of words that can sort of point you in a direction of what a religious experience might be like, but that computer did not have a religious experience. And the idea of it having anything like truly profound to say, it, as far as anything on that level, is just laughable to me. It has never had an experience. It will never have an experience. It will mash together words in a way that, if you're not reading too carefully, you might think was written by somebody who did have an experience, but all it did was plagiarize them. So like,
Yeah,
there's
and that's
no
why
novelty coming out of these.
yeah. No, that and maybe that's a very succinct way to put it. Is is anything truly new going to come out of these things? Um, it will there be a novel insight by one of these machines? I just that's not yeah that's I don't know that that's possible. If it was, it would be fascinating.
That would be a whole. Oh, that'll be a new podcast if I find compelling evidence of that happening. We
Yeah,
revisit this shit.
yeah, I mean, and we're not even assuming that we'd ever get to like the consciousness question or whatnot. That's a whole other can of worms. I'm just thinking of this thing as a tool, and that's because it's that lack of ability to say anything new, to do anything new, to respond to the moment, to so much of good sci-fi is imagining a future and then maybe what humans need to hear in the present to get to that future, a la Star Trek. This thing's not going to do that. Are you
No.
kidding? No, it's a purely commercial endeavor. Well, and that's why, who's making it? Is it philosophers? Is it artists making it? Is it people with like great aims for humanity? No, it's a bunch of motherfuckers trying to make money. So the things that these machines are going to be trained to make are commercial products, things that do human tasks and gather human, uh, try to get human attention. There could be and bad actors and people trying to get political
And bad
power.
actors, sure.
Yeah,
I think there's definitely some legitimate creative people who are fascinated by. I've met legitimately creative people who are just fascinated by the technology and want to use it as a force multiplier too. They're absolutely an ingredient in that pie. But yeah, the money, the driving force behind it, I would tend to agree
yeah.
is pretty much dollars.
I wonder if we'll be able to tell if that so it's I can see it augmenting the artist and being like the benefit of that is just obvious to me. If for no other reason, it's like a basic like idea generator. Like if you're trying to think of some kind of creature in some kind of new biome for your world building that you're doing for some fiction project, and you said, give me 10 different versions of, koala crossed with a dragon that lives in an ice biome, and that would just jog you a little bit, and then you ended up coming with something novel. I could see that being good. I worry about it maybe, and I don't know if we'd be able to even measure this, but diminishing the creative capacity in some extent, much like, the fact that we all have GPS and can drive our cars around anywhere we want to. That's great. But also, I think everybody's had the experience of you going, I don't even know how to get around my own fucking hometown because I'm just following the line and going from point A to point B. My mind and sense of spatial, there is something in me that is diminished. My innate capacity is being diminished by this thing, even though me plus this thing ends up being of greater capacity. And I wonder if it would do that to creatives. I don't know.
It's going to be, I think that's going to start telling over the generations, honestly. It's like even on the boat that I'm on right now, there's some older guys on here that are very self-employed and go-getters and big workers, right? Older guys, and complain about how nobody wants to work anymore, etc. But one of the things that they're into is they're like, damn man, when I was 20, I was on the docks smacking herring for fucking 14 hours a day every day, and that was just like fully approved. And now I try to get somebody to do that, and they're like, fuck you, dude, give me 10 hours a day and pay me $40 an hour. And I'm like, no bro, that's not how this shit works. And unfortunately, that is how this shit works right now. And there's I think a legitimate sense of loss in the generational difference in how much labor is considered to be a fair amount of labor to expect. What, just as an example, where there's a lack of physical development and sort of nose to the grindstoniness that has developed across the generations. And personally, I'm all in favor. I'm like, fuck you, old man. Why would you fucking expect me to get up at ass o'clock in the morning in -16 to fucking push fish around for $6 an hour? Fuck yourself. But then I look at that and then it like being, I grew up using maps. So I know that, so I do tend to keep a pretty good mental map of the town that I live in. And I know what a map looks like, and I could still use one if I needed to find my way around. My kids do not. But these things just change across the generation. And I don't think there's any way to predict how that's going to affect the next generation and how where humanity goes with it. Like the level of, there's just no way to predict it.
Yeah, in a way, I'm like becoming concerned about something that has already happened, which
Already
is like
happened. Exactly.
our innate capacity is going to be diminished by, augmenting ourselves with machines. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the life that I live. Like everything I
That's the
do
deal.
for work and
And
entertainment and whatnot is augmented by a machine in some respect, right?
go to your mother, your grandmother, whatever, of 300 years ago. He's going to go, you can't fucking forge a horseshoe. How the fuck you going to get to your ranch, bruh?
Yeah, you can't mill grain.
And it's like
Yeah.
You can't mill grain. Like you never did it, really? Yeah, no. I didn't.
Yeah, but has it ever, like, that's all us losing just whatever, because we're augmenting our environment with technology. We just need fewer and fewer innate like survival skills, or they become more highly specialized and machine augmented. But is there, I mean, isn't this the first time that we risk diminishing human creative capacity by augmenting it with machines? Or is there something else that's like that?
I mean, I'm sure the same was said about the printing press. The same was absolutely said about abstract impressionism. Is still said.
Hmm.
Duchamp and Jackson Pollock and all those guys going around splattering paint on shit. They sparked a fucking furor into the destruction of human creativity that continues to this day. People still go look at Jackson Pollock and go, oh, this motherfucker, a nice 5-year-old could do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You still hear that same fucking shit all the time. Like guys on the boat right now would go, oh yeah, I heard about this one piece of artwork. I just taped a banana to a fucking canvas. Like, what the fuck is that? That's not art. Like, this isn't a new conversation.
Yeah, that's true. And most of the stuff that I would care about that is the product of human creativity is born out of this almost irrepressible desire, motivation within the creator to make what they're making as a part of their own process as a human. Like I was just watching this video on YouTube about Bon Iver making his for what the heck's his actual name? Anyway, the guy whose band is Bon Iver, and how he made that first album, and it's just so like he was heartbroken in a cabin all by himself, super emo. But that album is just a beautiful, incredibly intimate, fragile, raw thing. And he made it as a process of like self-healing, and there's no way that would be augmented by a machine. I can't imagine him being like, I'm feeling lost and useless and not able to cope with the human condition, and give me some ideas for songs about that, AI. No, you're just gonna push it out into the world.
Maybe give me a drum beat.
Sure. And that's gonna be the good shit. And that will always exist. Yeah, again, I'm worried about it being buried in the sea of mediocrity. But maybe it's not such a worry. There's lots of mediocrity in the world, and a lot of it has access to be produced right now thanks to the internet. But you have things like tastemakers. Pitchfork is not going to rate an AI if you care about music, you're going to go to some place like Pitchfork that's a tastemaker, and they're not going to rate some AI generated music amazing. And if they do, it's probably going to be pretty profound, and it's going to hit different from you knowing that it didn't come out of a genuine expression of a conscious experience.
And most of the AI visual artists that I've seen really care about what they're doing. And they've just found this incredible tool that can generate what they want in a relatively short amount of time. And frankly, they're making things with it that you could not produce any other way. Like astonishing shit. As far as I'll put some send you some links to throw in the comments. Just astonishing videos of like just biomorphic people morphing into animals, morphing into landscapes, morphing into the clouds. It's just astonishing stuff that you really could not produce in any other way. You can say the same thing about computer graphics taking over from practical effects too, and people said it. And in many cases, it was legitimate. Like when Lucas decided to redo the original Star Wars with computer graphics instead of practical effects, it sucked.
Yeah,
sometimes that happens.
Sure, it did. But then you produce something like the new Avatar movies, which, regardless of what you think about their writing or value as cinema, you could never make that with practical effects. Like,
wouldn't happen.
No, I mean. Yeah, and it's not like that doesn't take armies of skilled humans to pull off. Will the AI be able to get there? Like we've said, the visual art. I mean, what would be your? Well, no, we have art that has an abstract bent. I think we're there where AI art can pass as human generated art, and already has, right? Because didn't a piece of AI
definitely
art,
can.
Yeah, we're already there, and I think the AI.
Yeah, we're there.
Yeah, so we just need some kind of transparency on the subject.
Yeah. Just unpredictable. It reminds me of there was a meme thrown around that I haven't actually checked the dates on, but I think is pretty accurate, that between the Wright brothers and the moon landing, there were only 66 years.
Wow.
Like, holy fuck, man. Like, the rate of progress in the 20th century is just not comprehensible, whether you were there or not. Just absolutely flooring. From the Wright brothers to the moon in under 70 years.
Yeah, the pace at which things have gone since the scientific revolution is just incredible. And now with the AI stuff, you can have AI software maybe write other AI software. It's going to be exponential.
You look around, you're like, holy shit, we sure are experiencing a lot of technological, social, and physical upheaval. And it's like, yeah.
And I think Silicon Valley
sure are.
Silicon Valley is going to lean into this 100%, because what Ryan Moser pointed out to me, which I hadn't really thought about, but he said, like, Silicon Valley's played out. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, think of a new thing that Silicon Valley has made in the last 10 years of any consequence. Truly novel, right? Google with their search engine, Facebook, nothing. Zippo.
Yeah.
Google's canceled a million product. Like, the last durable thing that Google came up with was like the Office suite. And I don't know how long that was ago, like 10 years ago. And that's just a copy of Microsoft with cloud abilities. So,
which Microsoft copied rapidly.
Yeah. Our tech juggernauts in the United States have just basically, I think the promise of Web 1.0, where you had a search engine like Ask Jeeves, you had you had to start to have some online shopping, and you started to have some rudimentary message boards and social media. That has all been fully blown out, fully optimized, fully profitized. It's over. Like, we have reached the ideal form of this thing. We went from the Model T to a good enough sedan, and they're not getting any faster. That's just what a fucking car is, and that's how it's going to be for the rest of the life. Okay. But this is truly a novel thing and a transformative thing, and an opportunity for a lot of people to make absolutely immense amount of money and change the world. And I can't believe I didn't see it coming, because I'd sat there in quiet moments and thought to myself, what is the next thing that's coming down the pike, like the light bulb or the internet or the whatever, the technological advance that's truly just going to be a demarcation line like the internet. There truly is a world pre-internet and a world after internet, and they are not the same in any respect. And I think the world post AI and pre-AI, it's going to be like that. It's going to be, remember the world before this thing? That we are right at that line right now in the pre-times, and we are entering the post times. Over the next 10 years will probably look unrecognizable in 2035 to where we are right now. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. I think that's true. That's probably a good spot to wrap up.
Prepare yourselves for the coming apocalypse. We didn't even touch on, Sam Harris has a lot to say about this, and Nick Bostrom about if you're interested. Nick Bostrom's the guy to read if you're interested in the terrifying possibility of actually like conscious general artificial intelligence. The philosophical problem there becomes, if the machine tells you that it's conscious, you kind of just have to take it at its word at that point.
You kind of do.
Like defining ethics around this thing becomes almost impossible. This is a philosophical problem called the problem of other minds, where you know that you're conscious, but I assume you're conscious because you look and talk and walk like me, but I don't really know that. And that's an impenetrable knowledge barrier. I can't really know that you're having a subjective experience, but it seems pretty reasonable. And so we all just go with it. But once the machine says, I am awake, then what do you do? But I don't know. I don't even know how to think about whether or not that's possible and in what time frame that sort of thing would happen. But at that point that it could like presumably think and experience and suffer, then you kind of just have to treat it with respect. And then what if it's godlike, more intelligent than us? Then is it our boss? I don't know.
I don't think we'd have a whole lot of practical issues. We're fully aware. It's been proven over and over and over that livestock animals are conscious and even intelligent. We still fucking shoot them.
Yeah, we do. I'm looking over at my hot wings and my hotel mini fridge and thinking, man, those chickens did probably not have...
Chickens can count. Chickens can count.
Yeah, but they're you ever been around a chicken? They're fucking dumb. But
they're assholes.
They can suffer. They can have a bad time, and they should not suffer. But man, sad chicken tastes pretty good. All right. Well, we will reconvene when the machines awake and tell us what their will for humanity is, and we will start a resistance, or we won't.
Or we won't. We'll accede to their demands. Until that time.
Thank you for listening to the Ryangle Podcast. Our music is by Talac, Tallac. For more by Talac, visit soundcloud.com/Talac.